Imagine why I Garja. Today's lesson is going to focus on a brand new poem called The People of the Other Village. This PowerPoint is to be used for today's lesson and for Friday's lesson as well. Okay, we'll see that the third task of this lesson is a creative, either a poster or a speech, okay? So I want you to try really, really hard for this and I want you to put loads of effort into it. That's why I'm going to give you time for Friday's class as well. What's going to happen is on Friday, I won't be uploading any more poetry work. I want you to work on task 3, okay? So try your best to get tasks 1 and 2 done today. Task 3, I want you to focus on Friday. And then on Friday, what I'm going to do also is I'm going to upload a small grammar lesson. Now, it'll only be about 5 sentences you'll have to write. I don't expect the video to be any more than a couple of minutes long, okay? It's just going over a grammar rule that we often make mistakes in, okay? I'll describe more about task 3 whenever we get to it. However, we're going to be, hopefully, it'll all work out. We're going to be arranging a live class to do, hopefully next Wednesday, in which we're going to have you all delivering your speeches and your posters to your classmates, okay? Because as I said, usually this topic in school really focuses on developing our speaking and listening skills. And obviously it's quite hard to do that from home, but we'll try and get a live class organised with as many people as possible who can make it, okay? So, our learning objectives for today's lesson. Understand what is meant by the term hyperbole. Identify examples of hyperbole in the poem, in line with our overall theme of the poetry project, which is equality. And last but not least, we will be creating a persuasive speech or poster, which will be suitable for an election campaign. My Shiv. So, as I said, the poem is called The People of the Other Village. This is just a screenshot from your poetry project booklet, which is on Google Classroom. And I have a hyperlink in this slide here, which is listening to the poet read it out. So I'm going to click on that here now, okay? He gives a bit of information.
This was a poem that I wrote after the first Gulf War, in the months after it, in the early 90s. And then when the second Gulf War started, or after 9/11, it started showing up again a lot on the internet and people asking me to reprint it and things like that. It's an angry poem about our hopeless need to be violent, relentlessly violent human beings. The people of the other village. The people of the other village hate the people of this village and would nail our hats to our heads for refusing in their presence to remove them, or staple our hands to our foreheads for refusing to salute them if we did not hurt them first. Mail them packages of rats, mix their flour at night with broken glass. We do this, they do that. They peel the larynx from one of our brothers' throats. We devein one of their sisters. The quicksand pits they built were good. Our amputation teams were better. We trained some birds to steal their wheat. They sent to us exploding ambassadors of peace. They do this, we do that. We canceled our sheep imports. They no longer bought our blankets. We mocked their greatest poet, and when that had no effect, we parodied the way they dance, which did cause pain, so they in turn said our God was leprous, hairless. We do this, they do that. 10,000 years, 10,000 brutal, beautiful years.
Okay, Garja. So as I said, that was just a different voice coming into the video to make it more appealing. It was the poet himself reading out the poem. Okay, so what have we learned from this poem? Okay, I want everybody to have a look at the words of the poem here now as well, okay? We weren't able to follow them on the video. I thought a transcript would come up, but unfortunately it didn't. So I want everyone just to pause the video here for 1 minute and read through the words yourself, okay? It's important that you're familiarising yourself with all of the words. And now, once you have that done, we're going to think about the poem. What has the poem taught us, okay? The poem is about two villages that constantly fight and trick each other, okay? The title is The People of the Other Village. So straight away we have that idea of otherness, okay? The idea of foreignness, okay? We know maybe that people aren't going to get on just from the title. They both do things, rather unpleasant things, such as mail each other packages of rats or exploding ambassadors of peace. Okay, so as I've said, the other village, it brings in that idea of foreignness, of unwelcomeness, okay? And you can definitely see that these aren't kind, loving, neighbourly acts that they're performing on one another. They're most certainly being very unpleasant, unfriendly and unwelcoming towards one another. They torture and trick each other because they hate each other. And they hate each other because they are different. Okay? So I want you to think of this poem in the term of overall equality, okay? Our overall term, our overall theme for the whole of the poetry project. Are these people equal? Well, we don't really have any background information on them, sure we don't. But sort of the message we're taking from the whole of the poetry project that we've looked at so far is that all people are equal, okay? So therefore, it makes us think, should these people be committing such unpleasant acts on one another? And the right answer is no, okay? So let's look at the 3 questions I've written in green. These are just to get us thinking. You don't need to write anything yet. Is it real hatred? Do you think that people from both villages really, really hate each other, okay? Has something maybe happened that has caused them to fall out? Well, obviously we don't know. We don't have a lot of background information at all. But we weren't told in the poem about maybe a fight or a war or anything like that that has maybe spurred on and encouraged this hatred. We just know that they simply do not get on. Is it something they are used to? The bottom line says 10,000 years, okay? And this is where the hyperbole comes into it. We're going to look at hyperbole on the next slide. But what we can assume is that this didn't really happen for 10,000 years. The poet is exaggerating in order to make us feel how long it's happened for. So it's happened maybe as far back as their grandparents or their great-grandparents or maybe even their great-great-grandparents, okay? So maybe it's just something that when a new generation is born, they are raised and used to hating the other village. And maybe if you ask the individuals that are carrying out these attacks now, maybe they don't actually know why they hate the other people. And the last question that I want you to think of, perhaps are they attacking each other and hating each other out of fear? So perhaps they would want to solve this issue and the conflict between them, but they fear that if perhaps one village wants to stop it, but they fear that if they aren't attacking the other village will attack them even more and they will become more vulnerable, okay? Again, we have no answers, we just have to think about all the possibilities. My Shiv. So, this is where we're going to be looking at hyperbole, okay? And this is our first task for today. This is where we need to write, okay? And as always, your written tasks are on Google Classroom in the Google Doc, okay? So what is a hyperbole? A hyperbole is a trick of exaggerating a situation, action, or feeling by using extreme language to intensify the image created in the reader's mind. Simply put, it uses exaggeration to emphasize and intensify the meaning. And that example that I just gave you on the previous slide from the poem, in terms of it being 10,000 years, it obviously hasn't been happening for 10,000 years, but that's the poet's way of telling us that it's been happening for years and years and years, okay? Maybe no one knows exactly how long, but it's him telling us that it's happened for so long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this orange picture. That's where the hyperlink is. If you're looking in the PowerPoint, that's not the video. If you're looking back over it, just click on the orange picture of hyperbole and it'll bring us to YouTube, okay? I want you to watch this video, Go Moleskine, because it gives us loads of examples and it'll help put it into everyday language for you, okay?
My bag weighs a ton. I had to wait in the station for 10 days, an eternity. I'm so hungry, I could eat a horse. Yeah. I know you heard of me. The best figure of speech, hands down hyperbole. I'm the one that similes yearn to be. I'm brighter than an Ivy University. I'm used universally, well maybe not quite. It might not be true, but it sure sounds nice. John Henry and Paul Bunyan both owe me a little something. Words have a literal meaning when they mean exactly what they say, and words have a figurative meaning when there's something more that they want to convey. That's me. I exaggerate, I make it seem bigger, better, more. I've been known to tell a tall tale or two, just to leave them in stitches like tailors do. Yeah, I pop up in pop-up bags and the cover of supermarket rags. No, the truth never bothered me. I'm hyper speed, hyperbole. Babe, the big blue ox could eat in one day all the feed one crew could tote to camp in a year. That's me. Hyperbole, hyperbole, exaggerate for effect, certainly. Build intensity and urgency, hyperbole. I know you heard of me, not hyperbole, hyperbole, exaggerate for effect, certainly. Build intensity and urgency, hyperbole. I know you heard of me. Now, why in the world would all these folks use me in their writing, speaking, and jokes? Authors can use hyperbole to emphasize the stature and the size of the characters, so they come alive. Take Johnny Appleseed, a real guy who walked barefoot a lot, okay? So his feet were calloused, and they say if a rattlesnake bit his feet, that snake would die immediately. Ha! That's hyperbole, used to convey Johnny's toughness, see? Or ask any preteen, certainly. Hyperbole conveys urgency. If I don't get to go to the mall tonight, I'm literally going to die. Literally? Not literally, but is it a lie when it shows how Nikki feels inside? And marketers use it all the time to get you to buy and buy and buy. World's best pizza, and yet did they conduct an actual test, pitting that pizza against all the rest to crown that slice as the global best? Nah, they are being hyperbolic, just trying to get what's in your wallet. When you see those claims, you are seeing me, exaggerating for effect, hyperbole. You've got a smile that could light up this whole town. That's my girl Taylor. Yeah. That's me. Hyperbole, hyperbole, exaggerate for effect, certainly. Build intensity and urgency, hyperbole. I know you heard of me, not hyperbole, hyperbole, exaggerate for effect, certainly. Build intensity and urgency, hyperbole. I know you heard of me, hyperbole, hyperbole, exaggerate for effect, certainly. Build intensity and urgency, hyperbole. I know you heard of me, not hyperbole, hyperbole, exaggerate for effect, certainly. Build intensity and urgency, hyperbole. I know you heard of me.
Okay, Carja, my shiv. So that is simply just a fun YouTube video that maybe puts it in a way that it'll be easier for you to remember, okay? So hyperbole, it builds effect, it builds and it intensifies everything. It makes it more exciting maybe to the reader, and some common examples we saw in the video were world's best pizza. That pizza shop doesn't know if it is the world's best pizza or not, but they're exaggerating to try and draw customers in. If I don't get to the mall, I'm going to die. Obviously, you're not going to die if you don't get to meet your friends or if you don't get to go shopping, but it's just a nice way to emphasize, intensify it, and make it all the more interesting, okay? My shiv. Can you think of any examples of hyperbole from the poem The People of the Other Village? Do you think the people actually nailed hats to people's heads or deveined someone's sister? No. The poet uses hyperbole here to emphasise and clearly convey the village people's hatred for the other people. Okay, so the word convey here simply means shows. So it clearly shows, it clearly conveys their hatred. It's easier for him to use these hyperboles, and it makes his poem more interesting instead of him saying they really hated the people because, okay? By saying all these heinous acts and crimes and attacks, it makes it that more interesting for the reader. So this is task 1, and as I say, this is directly copied and pasted into your Google Doc for you. There are 2 parts to task 1. Part 1. Write at least 4 more examples of hyperbole from the poem The People of the Other Village. Now, this poem is full of hyperbole examples, okay? You would most certainly be able to write more than 4. So if you've done your 4 and you see a 5th or a 6th one that you really, really enjoy as well, write it down. But everybody should be able to easily get 4 examples. And then part 2, write 2 common examples of hyperbole that you use or hear or see in everyday life. So 2 good examples from the video were world's best pizza and if I don't get there, I'm going to die. Try and use examples that aren't in the video. Try and think back to maybe even idioms and phrases that you say yourself, you see on TV, you hear on the radio, okay? My shiv. Task 2. Task 2, there's only 4 questions. It's simply a few comprehension questions, okay? Question 1 is the only question you need to use the point, evidence, explain, structure for, okay? Do you think these people really hate each other or is the poem more about fear? That's your opinion, so you can't get it wrong as long as you use your point, evidence, explain, expand. Remember, your evidence must be a quote from the poem. Pick whatever quote you want, okay? What is your favourite line in the poem and why? Is the poem relevant in today's society? So it'll be interesting to see your opinions here. Do you think it's relevant? Is there anything going on in our society today that sort of reflects this? Or do you think it's not relevant at all and it was just a nice poem to read but it has no relevance and you can't reflect it in today's society? And number 4, the poet repeats the idea of we and they. There are 2 parts to question 4. Number 1, what is this poetic device called? So think back to your poetry tools. It's on page 1 of your poetry project booklet if you need it. And then the second part, why has the poet used this? So why do you think the poet has used this poetic device? My shiv. I want full sentences, okay? Full sentences with capital letters at the start and full stops at the end, okay? My shiv. And then task 3, Akarja, okay? Let's get creative. This is the task that if you've done task 1 and task 2 today, you can leave task 3 till Friday if you want. Maybe it's a lot, but it all just ties together. So I wanted to put it all into one PowerPoint so you have it and you can be thinking about it, okay? So as I say, imagine you're running for election in one of these villages, okay? You're going to design a persuasive poster or write a speech. The speech or poster must outline your plans for the enemy, okay? So remember what these villages are built upon. These villages are built upon hatred for the other village, okay? So if you live in village A, you absolutely loathe the people who live in village B, and vice versa. If you live in village B, you're not interested and you detest the people from village A, okay? You can pick whatever village you want to run for, whatever village you want to be from, but your speech or your poster must convince the people of your village that you will do a good job if you are elected, okay? And as I've said, put loads and loads of effort into this, okay? I want it uploaded onto Google Classroom by Friday afternoon, be it your speech or your poster, but be prepared for next Wednesday. I will organise a live class when we will come on and say if I had written a speech, then I will give my favourite section of it to the class, or if I have designed a persuasive poster, I will explain why I chose the different things I chose, okay? You don't get more points for a poster or a speech. They're both being marked the same, but whatever you would find more interesting, whatever is more appealing to you, okay? My shiv. So, here's some tips if you want to write this speech. So, you're going to start every speech you ever write with an introduction. This is going to be your first paragraph. And in your first paragraph, you're going to outline why you're writing this speech. What do you want the outcome to be? So I am writing this speech because I want to be elected. I want you to believe in me. Okay, so you really want to grasp your listener. You really want the people in your village to know from the get-go that they should vote for you, okay? What do you want the outcome to be? What, as I say, that dates back to the last slide as to whatever your plans for the other villages, whatever your plans for your opponents are, okay? Your second paragraph, you're going to move on then to make your first point. You must make your first point strong, okay? If you go in weak and wishy-washy with your first point, your listeners aren't going to be interested. They're going to be thinking of the other candidates they can vote for, okay? So your first point needs to be strong. It needs to grasp the listener's attention. You need to tell the village people what you are going to do once you get elected, okay? Moving on to paragraph 3, which is going to be your second point, okay? So you need to make links with the last point. How will what you do affect the village people? So the first point that you're going to make is all about the people of the other village. So say you're from village A, your first point is going to be all about what you're going to do to the people from village B. But here in your second point, you're going to then talk about the advantages and the good things that are going to happen to the people of village A, the people of your village, okay? So it's all these promises that you're going to make them, the difference and the change that you can promise them and that you can introduce if you're elected. So I've only drawn this draft out in 4 paragraphs, but I've written here in italics. You can do as many points as you want. So if you want to move on, and maybe if you have a third point and a fourth point that you think would really, really sell your listener and really, really intrigue your listener into voting for you, then you can do it, okay? But every speech should have at least 4 paragraphs, meaning if you've made your first point and your second point and you can't think of anything else to write, you're going to move on to your conclusion, okay? But if you can think of more points, your conclusion's obviously going to be the last thing you do. So then your paragraph 4 would be your third point, and then your paragraph 5 would be your conclusion. I hope that's clear for you, okay? So your conclusion is going to summarise your main points in your final bid to convince your audience to vote for you. So this is all you have to get the audience to vote for you. So you're going to try and sum everything you promised them up into one nice, short, snappy conclusion. Leave a lasting impression. Maybe make a nice tagline, a nice strap line that when they're thinking back, they're going to think, I might vote for Kira. Do you remember how good her conclusion was? What her tagline was, okay? So give the audience something that they're going to remember you by. My shiv. So use some of these devices to make your writing more persuasive and interesting. We've got a metaphor, simile. Look back in your poetry tools as to what these are, okay? Give me some statistics. We don't know where this village is. We don't know who these people are. Therefore, it would be very, very, very hard to find statistics on them. Make some up, okay? Talk about the population. Talk about the employment rate. Whatever it is you want to do to grasp your reader's attention, make some statistics up. Repetition. We know repetition is key at leaving a lasting impression. So maybe repeat your tagline or your certain aims throughout. Adjectives. Make sure it's interesting and appealing, okay? Use as many good, attractive, strong adjectives as you can. Rhetorical questions. Who can remember what a rhetorical question is? A rhetorical question is a question that leaves a lasting impact on the reader or listener, but it doesn't deserve an answer, okay? It doesn't need an answer. So let's say we were all sitting in class to first year this morning and I say, okay, Akarja, do you want to write down the learning objective? Chances are some of you might not want to write down the learning objective, okay? It's a nice way of telling something and implying something without being demanding or without making people having to give an answer, okay? So it's a question that doesn't need an answer. Emotions and personal stories. You can bring in a story, maybe about when you were a child in this village. Talk all about your emotions and how that impacted you. Make it up. Get as creative as you want to get, okay? My Shivakarja. And now this slide here is all the information you need for designing a poster if you want to design a poster instead, okay? So you need to choose your wording carefully because you cannot write loads and loads of information on a poster, okay? It usually just has short, snappy sentences. So this is what your poster should contain. Short, snappy sentences informing the village people of what you intend to do once elected. So your promises, your taglines, okay? An eye-catching layout. So you don't want it to be really wordy, as I've already said. You want to have it laid out nice and clearly, so if someone was driving by, they would still know what say your poster's on a lamppost, if someone's driving by, they're going to be able to look at that for 5-10 seconds and they're going to know what your election is, what you're aiming to get in your election, okay? They don't have to sit down and read tons and tons of information. Attention grabbing pictures or images, okay? You can use pictures or images from Google or you can draw them if you want. And last but not least, a catchy slogan for your election campaign, okay? So if you think about all elections, student council elections, political elections, every single thing, everyone has a catchy slogan, which is, as I've mentioned in the last one as well, it's going to make the readers remember you when they're thinking back, oh, Kira had a really good slogan, I'm going to vote for her. It summed up her aims really, really well. And then I've written down here, remember to use some of the following. It's just the exact same 8 points I had in the last slide. So metaphor, simile, statistics, repetition, adjectives, rhetorical questions, emotions and personal stories, okay? And here are some really good examples of posters I was able to find on Google, okay? They're all laid out differently. Some of them are hand drawn, some of them are designed on the computer, some of them have pictures of the person running. That would make it more personal, okay? Some of them have nice animated pictures, would make it really appealing, really attractive to the eye, but all of them have not a lot of information. So that's why you have to choose your wording as carefully as you possibly can, okay? And Akarja, that is today's lesson. So task 1 and task 2 are writing tasks, and then task 3 is a writing task as well, but you can leave it to Friday and try your hardest, put as much effort into it as possible, okay? Because as I say, it will be really good to get a rang bia, to get a live class organised, to get back online, get talking to everyone, see how everyone's getting on at home, and most importantly, share our ideas, because remember, we're not really engaging in peer learning and peer assessment now that we're at home. So I want to try and bring that element back in so that we're learning from each other and helping each other out, okay? Akarja, as always, I'll be on Google Classroom for the duration of the class, both today and on Friday, and I'll be able to answer any questions you have at all. And remember, look out on Friday, I'll be uploading a short grammar exercise for you to complete as well, okay? My galore, Akarja, Gurm Wag of Slan.